Hello, everyone. Welcome back. We are continuing our discussion about the Star Wars films. This is the eighth one we've done, and we
Yeah.
are we are doing them chronologically. So we are just finishing up the original trilogy now with Return of the Jedi. I am Brian. That
And
is
I'm
Angela.
Angela. We never know how to do this.
No, we
Sometimes, like, I introduce Brian, he introduces me, and, like, I just interrupted and screwed it up.
one of these days we'll. Well, then the one time I just left you hanging to introduce yourself, which you weren't aware I was going to happen. So,
And
yeah,
there's just silence.
one of these days we'll figure it out. We have
Mm.
two more movies left after this, so
Mhm. Yeah,
um,
you think, like, 8 movies in, we would figure it out, but no.
and then we'll start the Marvel movies next year, and there'll be what right now there's what 22 of those I think. So
That will take us like a year and a half.
oh yeah, we can't do that weekly. There's no way.
No
I'd go
way.
crazy. Even this one is getting a little tiresome.
I
Well,
know.
especially you flew back from Disney World yesterday, right? So
Yeah, I did. I got back and I am exhausted. If you guys want a trip report about my adventures on the podcast, let us know. We can definitely do an episode
yeah,
about that.
yeah. I think we should do something like that.
Let's
Even
just do it. But
especially
we're
because you
making the
you were there
decision.
for the Hollywood Studios 30th anniversary and everything.
Yeah.
It'll be interesting.
Our last day, we did 3 parks in one day. So,
Jeez.
yeah.
Yeah, I've done that shooting videos. I've actually made it to all four before. D, good morning.
Hi, T.
Um, and it's tiring. Like even if you're just in one park for like an hour, it's still tiring. Like it's tough adding
It
that extra
is.
travel.
It was like a 16-hour day or something. But we want to start off this stream by talking about Chewbacca.
Oh yes, of course. Peter Mayhew, the actor who played Chewbacca, up through um,
Force
Force
Awakens.
Awakens, I believe. Yeah, was the last time in the suit, and he passed away last night, age I believe 74.
Mhm.
Um, so yeah, that was it's tough. It's I mean he lived a good life, but it's still sad, especially since we've been going through so many of these Star Wars films and seeing what he did. It's hard to believe that he won't be making it to all the celebrations and that anymore because he was one that was always at stuff like that. So,
Ryan, gosh, you almost made me tear up with your little speech.
so
Yeah. So, wasn't he at the Star Wars celebration in Chicago too?
I believe so. Yeah,
And
I
that
think he
was,
does all the fan stuff. Like he is always around, like doing that stuff. He's one of the actors um, that really embraces that role.
Mhm. And he was proud to do it. I think I just read an article about it the other day, and he was always just like really proud to have been part of movie history. And I mean, who really wouldn't? Something like Star Wars is
Well,
just
yeah. Well, some people
amazing.
don't. Natalie
Well,
Portman
yeah.
never really shows up at anything. It depends. Harrison Ford will never be at one of these. It kind of just depends on your attitude about stuff like this. I think
But
we
I
will
guess.
talk much more about Harrison Ford not wanting to do this as we get into the movie.
Okay,
Um,
before I cry, we need to change the subject. But thank you to Brian for the super chat. That's
yeah,
amazing. And he has our app and he says that it's
yeah.
awesome. Yes, we do have an app if you didn't know. Um, the app, Brian, do you want to talk a little bit about that? I used that my entire trip. If you're just now joining, I was in Walt
Yeah, well,
Disney World. Got
if
back
for some
yesterday.
reason people watching this aren't familiar with touringplans.com, we specialize in helping you plan theme park vacations primarily. So we have touring plans for Disney World, Universal, Orlando, and Disneyland. We also have information on the site about Disney Cruise Line, Washington D.C., and Tokyo Disney.
Mhm.
Um, and what the app does, it'll basically tell you the real wait times. So not the times that are posted, the times that you are expected to actually wait in line. Disney often inflates the posted times sometimes quite a bit. And you can access the touring plans, which use very complicated algorithms to tell you the best order to ride the rides in, basically. So um, anybody who needs that kind of help, yeah, subscribe to Touring Plans. I have the banner up for a little bit, but and I see Aaron said Yeah, he used some of our advice at Disney, and it worked well. Good morning, coolness. Good morning, Wendy. So
Yes, I just realized I didn't have my microphone. Do you hear me better now?
it's actually pretty similar, but I
There's
went
like no difference. Okay.
a little bit. I don't know.
Um, why do I
You are
bother?
louder now, so
No,
that's
I
helpful.
yeah, I used the app to look at the wait times, and I followed my touring plans on there. So yeah, it was great. But okay, we have
All
a
right.
lot to talk about.
So
So let's,
yeah, this is Return of the Jedi, the last of the original trilogy. This one is um, a little bit more. People are a little more on the fence with this one, which we'll get to quite a bit as we go through it. But it came out May 25th, 1983. So 3 years again after Empire Strikes Back. 3 years in between but all three of the original films.
Mhm.
In the story, this is 4 years after the Battle of Yavin, so 1 year after Empire Strikes Back, and I think that's a little iffy. Not people aren't exactly sure. I don't think when this takes place, but the one I saw the most often was about a year after. So, what do you remember about Return of the Jedi? Do you remember seeing this one?
Yes, I remember pretty much all of this movie. If the first two, if those are a little spotty, I remember like I could basically like close my eyes and do the whole thing because I saw this the most. Probably because out of the three, it's the most kid friendly. And I started watching these when I
Parts of
was
it, yeah.
4 or 5. Yeah. I mean, my kids actually, I took a picture of them last night. They were watching this with me, and they were like, they were so into it that they were like on their tummies like this in front of the movie screen. And my daughter's favorite character is Darth Vader.
Oh well, that makes sense. My
And my
son,
5 year
my
old.
son always loved the Darth Vader and Stormtroopers. Also, he's faded. He was more into Star Wars actually, like a couple of years ago, and he's actually
Hmm.
faded a little bit now. I don't know why, but um, I keep trying to get my daughter to watch it because she loves fantasy stuff, and she's gotten really into the more recent Marvel movies.
Oh,
Her and I went to see Endgame last weekend, and she really liked it, even though it's pretty dark at times. So I keep trying to get her to watch Star Wars movies, but she associates them so much with boys and things that I like that I think it's going to be a while before she'll even really watch them. So
well, and that's the thing. Like, my kids are 5 and 3, which is like questionable why I'm letting, 3-year-old watch a lightsaber battle.
except
And I
we
thought,
except we all did at that. I mean, at this
I
time,
know,
because I was
I
only
know,
5 when this came out, and I don't
right.
think I saw it in theaters, but I think I saw it as soon as it came on HBO. Then, so
Yeah, and they were watching it and I kept looking like I'm like, are you guys scared? And they're like, no, this is cool. And like they were super into it, like not even talking. And of course my
well,
daughter, like when she was talking, was asking a lot of questions like,
hmm
who is he? And then when it came to the ending, she's like, why is he good now? But anyway,
that's a good
let
question. I also
I
ask that. Yeah,
I know it's like complete 180. Okay, let's
I
talk
agree,
about it.
Wendy. Endgame was amazing. I liked it quite a bit, although can't won't talk about that quite yet.
And what do you remember about it?
It's funny this one because, like I said, I know I saw this. I don't think I saw it in the theaters. I don't quite remember, but it would have come on HBO. I think they all came on HBO like later in '83, which is when I kind of started watching them. And I know as a kid, almost all of my toys are from Return of the Jedi, just because that's when I was buying the toys. So I have, and I didn't get over to my parents' house to pull some of them out of the attic, but I know I have a Rancor, I have the Ewok Village, I had I had Slave One, although I think that was the Empire, because it doesn't appear in this film, but I had a bunch of Ewoks. I'm trying to think of what else I had. I know I had Han Solo in Carbonite. I know I had Lando in the Jabba's palace thing with the weird mask and stuff.
Hmm.
So I I was very familiar with this, but now watching it now, I feel like I remember less of it than I do the other two. I think as I started getting older, and especially when I went in the dark ages of Star Wars in like the early '90s, where there was just nothing coming. I this is when I kind of really got into like the filmmaking of Star Wars. But I feel
Hmm.
like I watched the first two much more then. So those two I remember really, really well. This one, there were parts where I'm like, oh, that's right. I forgot. I totally forgot this happens.
Yeah.
Um, so, so I think I kind of not that I gave up on it, but I think I outgrew it a little bit more
Yeah.
quicker than I did the others.
I forget little details, which I'll talk about later. Um, but yeah, I remember most of this movie. Um, let's see. Oh, Jolly said seeing Angela and Brian sipping coffee and tea makes me crave something hot to sip on too.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, you can always join us. We usually have something
Yeah,
during these
my voice gets
streams.
real raspy if I don't have something, so I usually will make tea or just drink straight whiskey, whatever. You
Yeah,
can tell by the end which one it is.
same thing. He's normally just like stuttering on his words by the end. That's actually me when I'm reading. So, okay, should we start?
All right, let's start. Yeah, I don't have my little graphics of the text here because I telling Angela I was on the phone with Disney about Star Wars Galaxy's Edge reservations for
Yes.
Disneyland until about 10 minutes before we started. So,
Yeah.
all right. So first up, we are at Jabba's palace and Dagobah, and again, like the last movie, we're kind of taking big chunks of this one because it works a little bit better to talk about. But so in an attempt to rescue Han Solo from crime lord Jabba the Hutt, C-3PO and R2-D2 are sent to Jabba's palace on Tatooine in a trade bargain made by Luke Skywalker. Disguised as a bounty hunter, Princess Leia infiltrates the palace under the pretense of collecting the bounty on Chewbacca and unfreezes Han, but is caught and enslaved. Luke arrives soon afterwards, but is dropped through a trapdoor to do battle with Jabba's Rancor. Jabba sentences Luke and Han to death by being fed to the Sarlacc, but Luke frees himself and battles Jabba's guards while Leia uses her chains to strangle Jabba, and they all get away as Jabba's barge explodes. As the others rendezvous with the Rebel Alliance, Luke returns to Dagobah, where he finds that Yoda is dying. Yoda confirms that Darth Vader, once known as Anakin Skywalker, we knew that, is Luke's father, and the spirit of Obi-Wan Kenobi reveals that Leia is Luke's sister. Whew, so this is like the first half of the movie, I feel like. But
Yeah. What happens?
yeah,
Okay.
this movie was tough to break up because it was either break it up into like little tiny chunks of everything, or
Hmm.
because I was like, well, if we just talked about Dagobah, there's not a lot to say in there, so I just kind of threw
No.
it in with this one. So, all right, so what are your feelings about this? I know you mentioned about this being more kid friendly, but this whole section at Jabba's palace is not super kid friendly generally.
Yes, I have thoughts. First of all, Lando, how long had he been hanging out at Jabba's palace?
I know. Well,
Like, was this like a year, a few months? Like, how do you just kind of mosey his way in?
that brings up the whole thing about the plan in general, which
Yeah.
makes no sense whatsoever. It's
No.
so so they send the droids in as a gift, and then presumably Luke will come later and try to bargain for Han, I guess, and then just figures, oh well, if I can't get him by bargain, I'll just kill everyone and take him.
Yeah.
But then Leia comes in and rescues. So did they not know the other one was had their own plan? And what was Leia's plan? Was she just going to leave with Han and leave everyone else there?
And how are they going to get Chewie out? How are
Yeah,
they going to break him out? Were they going to bring 3PO with? Where's Luke been this whole time?
yeah, and like you said, Lando. It seems like he's
Leia and him
there,
were working on
and he
something.
certainly doesn't hide himself very well.
No.
So did he just go and be like, "Hi, I'm Lando Calrissian. I need a job," and
Right.
and he doesn't. I mean, he helps some when they start actually breaking out, but before that, like it's not like he frees Han some night when no one's paying attention. So was he even going to
No.
try to break everybody out, or was he just like, "Oh, this is my job now"?
I know. No, it's just like there's a lot of gaps in this plan.
It's a
I don't know
terrible
how well
plan.
thought. I know it was not very well thought out.
I mean, of course, it
Um,
can be answered by the Force. Luke, sees how the future is going to unfold, but everything can be answered by the Force. So,
it's just like the whole plan. I'm just like when did Lando show up? Is he like, is he like Jabba's bodyguard
mhm.
or like another bounty hunter? I mean,
I
you
know
never know.
it's so weird.
I don't
Um,
understand.
so yeah, I love. We
Yeah.
find out right off the bat that they are building the Empire is building a weapon more powerful than the Death Star, which of
Uh-huh.
course is a slightly bigger Death Star.
Right. It's like the sequel.
Yeah,
It's the same thing.
which I mean, luckily, the movies going forward, they don't just use another Death Star, right?
Well, and the plan, okay, I do
I'm
get to
kidding,
this a
because of
little
course next
later.
week we get to Starkiller Base, which is an even bigger Death Star, basically.
Oh, I
So,
forgot about that.
yeah,
I really need to rewatch those. Good thing I'm doing that. But
yeah,
I do no, I'll wait till we get to the next part. I don't want to spoil it. Anyway, and you see a lot of creatures, which does make it a little more kid friendly, I
yeah.
guess.
There's a
All
lot
the
of
creatures.
there are a lot of cool creatures. I have one still there from of Luke after he grabs the blaster there, and you see the Gamorrean guard on the left there, which is the big pig man, and just a bunch of crazy things. You see a little a Rhodian back there, which is Greedo basically.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, and I do like that, but it get and again of something we've plugged every time is the podcast Star Wars Minute, which I've been listening to a lot. We talked on one of our podcast episodes. We talked to Alex Robinson from there about Galaxy's Edge, and one of the things they kind of point out about the difference with this versus like the Cantina scene, which also has a lot of crazy things in it, but
Hmm.
they're meant as kind of more passing. I mean, you got obviously Greedo has an important role, but everybody else you get for a second here, a second there, or you see them in the background. In Jabba's palace, they seem to really like focus in on like every single person. Like, look how
Hmm.
weird everybody is, and
Yeah.
it doesn't quite fit right. Of course, the most famous one here is Salacious Crumb, who is the little Kowakian monkey lizard that sits in
Yeah.
Jabba's tail and laughs. I mentioned that because you can what they are trying as a banshee-like toy in Galaxy's Edge is a Kowakian monkey lizard that will sit on your shoulder and move around and stuff. They're on top. I don't really like the toy version. How they have like the like marionette like joints where you can kind of see
Oh yeah.
the joints in it. Like it, I don't know.
He
And I
gets a
don't.
lot of screen time
He
though.
gets a lot. Like he is basically the laugh track for this whole section.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's yeah. I don't know. It's funny because this was a movie I really liked when I was younger, and now like the more I watch it, the more I kind of see the holes in it. Um, this was a is a weird movie. Richard Marquardt is the director, who is primarily a TV director. Now George Lucas reportedly asked David Lynch and David Cronenberg to do this, which both of those would have been wild versions of Return of the Jedi. But he kind of went with a TV director because Irvin Kershner, who directed Empire Strikes Back, pretty much fought with George on everything, and wanted to do it his own way. And George, very famously, we said this last week, George says that Empire is the worst of the first six movies because it's the one he had the least amount to do with. Part of that because Kershner pretty much said, "No, this is mine. Like I got this." So I don't know if it's ever been said, but I think the thought is that he picked Marquand knowing that okay, he'll do what I want him to do, kind of
Hmm.
thing.
Yeah.
And it shows there is a lot of humor in this that is very very reminiscent of the prequels.
Yep.
So
I mean, speaking of the prequels, for the special edition, they added a song, and I do not like it. I like how they did it before. I don't know. I wasn't impressed with the little song and the singer act. It just doesn't fit with the overall rest of the atmosphere because
no,
you
it's
can just tell it's CGI.
it is. It's very, very obviously CGI. It's called Jedi Rocks, the new song. It's a kind of a bluesy thing. The original one is Laptinek, which was a shorter sequence, and it was actually written by John Williams' son, Joseph Williams, I believe, who after this became the lead singer of the band Toto for a few years. So,
Really?
yeah.
Oh. And side note, when the girl falls in, I thought this for probably, oh gosh, 15 years. I thought that when the girl fell in and was attacked by the Rancor, I thought
hmm
that she became like the little creature that Jabba then picks up and eats.
It's funny. I saw you say that in the notes, and Star Wars Minute had a couple of guests and calls in from people who thought that exact same thing.
Well, it looks
Um,
just like her. It's all like,
yeah,
has
it's got
little
the little tentacle
tentacles.
things on it. Yeah. And I found out this morning I was watching. I found a video on YouTube with all the special edition changes, And the scene where they show her in the Rancor pit was added later. That scene was deleted in the initial cut. So in the initial cut, she falls, and then it cuts to the next scene. So it makes more sense why you would think, because you don't ever
Oh,
see what happens to her.
right.
And in the special editions, now you see her fall into the pit, and the door starts to open, and then you hear screams. But none of that was in the original. So, and yeah, Tim here says that every Star Wars movie has holes, that we're just more critical of it now, which I totally agree. And
Yeah.
and I think we'll probably talk more about that when we get to the Disney ones, Force Awakens and The Last Jedi. Um, but um, but this one, I don't know. There are parts of this that I just don't think are a very good movie. This whole Jabba sequence that we're talking about, I actually like a lot.
Mhm.
I don't like the Jedi Rock song. I wish we could get Lapti Neck back. But the whole time they're on Tatooine here, this is a really good whole sequence.
Well, I think that
Um,
the prequels made those holes even more obvious.
the prequels are tough. I don't think. Again, there are big, just large swaths that are just not very good.
Hmm.
And some of them are made up for by sequences that are good, which is kind of how I feel about this movie. I think this whole section is really good. The next section, maybe not so much.
Speaking of things like I'm you said you forgot quite a few things, and I remember most of it. But as far as how Boba Fett falls in
Hmm.
to the Sarlacc pit, is that what it's
Yep.
called? Um, I had no idea up until last night that it was an accident and that Luke
Yeah.
accidentally or Han
Han.
accident
Yeah.
Han accidentally like bumped into him and that he fell in. Like
I
I
know.
thought maybe he was pushed or I don't know, like
What
shot
a
in there.
what a way to go, huh?
I know, it's just like such a bummer for him. I don't
Um,
know.
all right. So on Dagobah, we actually, between the two of us, we have like one note for the entire sequence on Dagobah.
Yeah.
Um, So Luke finally finds out. Yoda dies. At 900 years old, apparently. Um, and then he talks to Ben. I find it very funny that the Force ghost of Ben just kind of wanders through the jungle and then sits down, like he's
Yeah.
still an old man, even as a Force ghost, I guess.
Hmm. Yeah.
Um, but then Ben goes on to contradict basically everything that we learn in the prequels. Um,
I didn't think that completely. Like I could make sense or rationalize most of it
Most of it, yeah. There's
until
there's
the
only a couple
last
things,
part.
yeah. But
Yeah.
even and again, I mean, we talked about a lot with the prequels, so we don't need to go into it. But if we had met Anakin for the first time as like a teenager, I think a lot of it would have matched up better, which was the
Yeah.
initial idea until right before they started shooting Phantom Menace. So, um, because he talks about he was already a great pilot when I met him, which I mean, I guess kinda,
Kind of.
you
He
know
talks
that
about teaching him like better than Yoda, but Yoda didn't really play any part in teaching
Yeah.
him.
Yeah, and then, they don't mention Qui-Gon Jinn at all, which I'm honestly shocked that they didn't add in when they did like the Blu-ray edition, like just some voiceover line of like, oh, and Qui-Gon Jinn too, like,
Right.
um, but, but yeah, it's very funny on one of the Star Wars minute running jokes through this is that Leia is not actually Luke's sister because the way it's delivered by Alec Guinness is kind of funny where he says, no, there's another, and Luke goes, Leia's my sister, and Ben just kind of stares at him for a second, and then is like, like,
Like I
like
guess.
sure, whatever. Which I thought, well, of course he's gonna guess that. There's like two women in this movie. It's either Leia or Mon Mothma. I mean,
It's like two women he's ever met.
yeah. So, all right.
When Wendy says Luke seems to have a lot more confidence at this point than he does when talking to Yoda, and that was when he was on
Mm-hmm.
Tatooine, which I agree. And Josh says after rewatching Return of the Jedi, noticed right before Luke falls down into the Rancor pit, he has a blaster, and then he grabs using the Force, which you
Mm-hmm.
showed a picture of. But when we see him in the pit, he has no weapon. So either, yeah, did it fall
Yeah.
into the pit?
I don't for some reason I'm thinking that they grabbed it back off of him like as he
Yeah,
fell, but he may not. It might just be something that they kind of forgot it fell down there too. Who
or
knows?
broke or
Yeah.
something. Yes, okay.
All right, should we move
And
on to Endor?
Endor. Yes. very excited to talk about this. The Rebel Alliance learns that the Empire has been constructing a new Death Star under the supervision of the Emperor himself. The station is protected by an energy shield, so Han leads a strike team to destroy the shield generator on the forest moon of Endor. Luke and Leia accompany the strike team to Endor in a stolen Imperial shuttle and encounter a tribe of Ewoks. I love Ewoks. After eventually befriending the Ewoks, Luke tells Leia that she is his sister, Vader is their father, and that he must confront him. Surrendering to Imperial troops, Luke is brought before Vader and he tries to convince his father to return from the dark side of the Force.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, all right, we should probably just get into this with the Ewoks here. So, the Ewoks are a lot of Star Wars fans are not fans of the Ewoks. I personally don't mind the Ewoks themselves very much. I think this is the part of the movie where it turns into a completely different movie and
Yeah.
stalls very, very badly. I mean, the whole strike team is sent to Endor basically to disable the shield for the Death Star, and then as soon as they meet the Ewoks, they're just hanging out and having dinner and stuff. It's like, well, don't you have something to do?
Yeah,
Like,
they kind of forget the mission. Well, what do you guys think about this part? It's not very Star Warsy. It completely changes how the other, like the theme of like how the other two movies have been and the movie up until this point. What do you guys think of it? Did you like it when you first watched it? Did you
um,
like the changes?
but another reason I know Angela does like the Ewoks is because she got to meet some the other night. I pulled you a
I,
picture off of Twitter here for that
yeah,
one.
I was
But
wondering.
this was what, like 2 days ago?
2 days ago.
Yeah.
I have a better one where I'm actually looking at the camera. But when they first came out, I waited probably in line for 20 minutes before they even came out because they were waiting till it stopped raining. And
Oh
for
yeah, you don't
some
want to get that
reason,
fur wet.
no, for some reason, my reaction was so extreme. I was jumping up and down and I started tearing up because I was so excited. I like, oh my gosh, it was so dramatic. And they are so cute. Well, okay, the big one, he was
Mhm.
mad at
Oh,
me because I
sorry,
told him
don't
that
forget.
they were so cuddly, and then he like wouldn't let me touch him. He was really angry.
No,
So
they're
like if you yeah, if you meet him, don't like tell them that.
they're fierce warriors. Come on.
I know
But
that was not good on my part, but I did, my sister-in-law did film my interactions with them.
very
So
nice.
I have a vlog that I will be uploading on that. Um, yes. So yes, they're just, and they're so tiny. They're like as tiny as they are in the films.
Well, speaking of tiny, I also have a picture here. Warwick Davis, of course, played Wicket. This was, I think, his first role, or one of his first, because he was only 12 years old at the time. And there's a picture of adorable little Warwick Davis, in even smaller than he still is, but as a preteen, dressed up as Wicket, which um, is crazy. I can't even imagine doing something like this at that age.
At 12,
Yeah,
really?
yeah.
That's crazy.
So
Um,
I think he might have actually been 11 when they started, even, and then had his 12th birthday.
that's
Uh,
a pretty big role too.
yeah, he's, and I don't know. I mean, it's possible he's not the one in the suit the whole time. I mean, they probably have stunt doubles and things like that. But and I imagine even then there were still child labor laws. So
Yeah,
um,
like 4 hours of work a
yeah,
day or
so
something.
he might not have been him the whole time, but at least a lot of it there was. Um, yeah, there's something one thing that I noticed a lot this time that I think I hadn't noticed before, probably because I'm watching on Blu-ray now. But the composite shots. So like if they have a a lot of times they'll use like matte paintings behind them or things like that in these movies, and then add them via blue screen and that kind of stuff,
Mhm.
where they're taking multiple shots and adding them together. They don't quite work right in this movie. Like there's the one scene where Lando and Han are arguing about the Millennium Falcon, and not a scratch, right? They're not quite looking at each other, and I don't know if they were filmed separately or because it was the blue screen. Maybe their eye lines were weird, but like I don't remember noticing that rewatching A New Hope or Empire Strikes Back. But in this one, there was quite a few scenes where I was like, I don't know, they don't look like they're looking in the right place.
I watched that scene more closely because you pointed it out,
Mhm.
and I thought it was okay. But when I looked at the background, I completely noticed that it was a painting. Once you
Yeah.
said it was a painting, um,
Yeah, they actually
it
didn't
was
build a Millennium Falcon for this. They have the interior scenes, but there's no exterior at all. So
wow.
I guess they
Uh,
didn't keep it from the last movie.
yeah. Now that I'm older and I watched this, the Ewok scene, you're right, it doesn't make any sense in the movie, and it completely stalls their plan. And let's see, Tim said the section doesn't fit with George's famous direction of faster, more
Hmm.
intense. And it's completely right. Like, even when we get to the newer movies now, Force Awakens, especially, and really any of them, they're always really fast paced and things are
Yeah.
always happening, and it's always one problem after another. And this just
Yeah.
stalls. So,
Uh,
but Jeff said, it felt like an excuse to have Han and Leia dialogue, which you also point out they don't really do a lot, the two of them.
no, Harrison Ford and Carrie Fisher are very, very underused in this movie, and some of that may be kind of their own choice. So famously with this, well, some of the writers actually wanted to kill at least one of the semi-main characters. I guess Lando was brought up a lot. They talked about having him die at the Sarlacc pit, and then
Hmm.
again in the battle at the end. In fact, there was talk of destroying the Millennium Falcon in the battle at the end with Lando aboard, which I'm very glad they didn't do that.
Me
But
too.
but apparently Harrison Ford heard about this and wanted Han Solo to be the one that died because he didn't want to be in the movie. And I guess his contract at the time, when he signed the original contract, it did not include the third movie. So that's why Han Solo was frozen in carbonite in Strikes Back. Because if
Mm,
he didn't come back for Jedi, they were just going to leave him frozen.
right.
Um, but he apparently decided to come back, I'm sure for money reasons, but wanted
Yeah.
them to kill off Han because he didn't want to do the whole movie. So he was not super into it, I don't think. And then Carrie Fisher has very publicly said, or had, I suppose, before her death, that this was the time when she was like the heaviest on drugs.
Hmm.
And you can kind of tell in some of these scenes with her and Han and her and Luke, she is not doesn't she's very like just flat. And
Hmm.
compare it to Empire, where both Han and Leia were just electric. In this one, they seem to not really be, and I think in Harrison Ford's case, he doesn't want to be there, and in Carrie Fisher's case, she's not 100% there. So that
Yeah.
could be some of the reasons why. Maybe there was more for them to do, and they were like, okay, we can't do this. But yeah, they don't do anything. They blow up the satellite dish thing, with major assists from the Ewoks, and then that's kind of it. Like,
Yeah. No, I mean it just like I think it could have been wrapped up a lot quicker, but uh Carrie Fisher's acting pretty much goes downhill once they
mm,
get to Endor. And she's very, very thin in this movie,
yeah,
and you can tell she's kind of aged in between darker
yeah,
circles that they're using a lot of makeup to cover up.
it's a lot of
Um,
cocaine. Yeah,
yeah, poor Carrie Fisher. Let's talk about the speeder bikes, though.
yes,
I mean, Luke's going all Sebulba from Phantom Menace in this scene, just like bashing the stormtroopers. Or are they stormtroopers? Because they have different helmets on. Are they still
they
considered
are
stormtroopers?
scout troopers, I believe, is what they are
Scout
called.
troopers.
Um,
Um,
but yeah, I mean, they're still basically stormtroopers. Um, they just ride speeder bikes and hang out in the woods. But I like the look of the scout troopers.
they look like a lot of fun, and I was wondering how much height they get too. I always wonder that with those kind of vehicles.
I
Um,
think the Star Wars Minute guys said they will go up to like something like, I think it's like 40 feet, something like that, for brief periods. Which, because you see Leia at one point come in kind of from a higher
right.
angle, so apparently they can do that for a little bit. But they do seem very fun. Like that's the type of thing that I would love to be able to just, ride around town or something. But
I know.
they also seem just incredibly dangerous,
Yeah.
especially to ride around. I was trying to look for a good picture of the speeder bike scene, but I can't really find one. Um, but here's this one's not too bad, but they there we go. There's the speeder bike with some of the scout troopers and some stormtroopers actually in front of the bunker, but and of course at Hollywood Studios, Disney World, they had for quite a while that speeder bike that you could pose with that is not there
Hmm.
anymore. Um, I'm sure there will be plenty of things to pose with in Galaxy's Edge,
Yeah.
um, but yeah, like if you're going around a forest moon, you think that you wouldn't go with like high speed, completely unprotected vehicles so much.
Right. Right. Because there's like so many trees, and the whole time I'm like, they're gonna crash, and then what happens?
Well, yeah, they crash constantly. It seems
I
like.
know. That's like all they do. But okay. Do you want to move on to the Death
Yeah,
Star?
I was just yeah. I think we got everything here. Okay, so Death Star Part Two. Um, Vader takes Luke to the Death Star to meet the Emperor, intent on turning him to the dark side. The Emperor reveals the Death Star is operational and that the Rebel fleet will fall into a trap. Battle ensues in space and in the forest moon. And on the forest moon, the Emperor tempts Luke into engaging Vader in a lightsaber duel. Vader senses Luke has a sister, threatens to turn her to the dark side. Enraged, Luke attacks and severs Vader's hand. Emperor tells Luke to kill Vader and take his place, but Luke refuses, declaring himself a Jedi like his father before him. Furious, the Emperor tortures Luke with Force lightning, but unwilling to let his son die, Vader throws the Emperor to his death. Vader is mortally wounded in the process. At his last request, Luke removes Anakin's mask before he dies in Luke's arms. The strike team does eventually destroy the shield generator, and Lando leads a group of rebel fighters into the Death Star core and destroys its main reactor. So
Okay.
that's basically from the Death Star all the way through the end. I didn't include too much about what happens. Oops, sorry. I think I bumped a display there. So you're reading Jeff's comment the whole time I was talking. But the I didn't include much of what happens on Endor or in the space battle because there's not a lot of necessarily details in there. But some good stuff. I really like the space battle in this one actually.
Yeah, I get a big kick out of the commander turning over Luke to Vader, and he's
Oh
like so proud of himself, like he did it all himself, and
yeah.
Luke didn't just show up
Mm-hmm.
for him.
You
I
caught
know,
him, sir.
yeah, it's like I did it. Wants a gold medal or
Of
something.
course,
And I
the very one of the most famous, I think, Star Wars lines in this one pops up here, which is Admiral Akbar's "It's a trap,"
It's a trap.
which is a just a fun thing to yell every time you hear the word "trap," which I do, of course.
Well, why not? It's perfect. And Vader also talks to Luke before they go see the Emperor, and they're like having a little discussion about like, Father, there's good in you, blah blah. Vader talks to him with some paternal inflection, and considering he has no father experience and he had no part in raising
Hmm.
Luke. I was really surprised. Like he has somewhat of a gentle voice, and there's almost a little bit of sadness, like it's too late for me, blah blah blah.
Yeah,
And then he battles Luke right afterwards. So I was always like a little surprised by that.
yeah. It's funny rewatching it now, especially after seeing all the prequels. Um, you you really notice that yeah, he's just kind like it almost seems like Vader. There's nothing you can do about it. Like, nope, I'm part of the dark side now. Dark side that you can't turn away from the dark side. Here we are.
Yeah.
More so than like he chose to do it, which I mean, you could argue that Anakin didn't really choose to do it so much in the first place, that he was
Right.
manipulated in that, but it very much comes across like, well, I'd love to turn, but too late. Sorry.
Yeah.
Um,
I always say it wrong. McDarmid, right?
McDermott, yeah.
I
He's
think
Irish,
watch
so you have to throw a lot of throat into it. McDermott.
McDarmid. If you watch his interviews or like the Star Wars Celebration interviews, he's the nicest guy ever.
Oh yeah, I've.
He's so nice, tells so many stories, so charismatic.
Mhm.
And then you see him here, and it's like the polar opposite. So it just makes his performance even funnier.
It's so funny that like he basically was playing this ancient looking emperor in this, and then has kind of grown into looking like. No, I mean not the emperor. Obviously, he doesn't look that bad yet, but I mean he's kind of almost grown into the emperor over the years, which is just
Yeah.
hilarious. But yeah, I'm amazed at, because I don't remember how old he was at this point, but somewhere around 30, I think, give or take.
Really?
And to do
Wow.
that voice at that age is plus it's just such a fun voice to do.
Yeah.
Um, but and he like spits every line like he's mad at it, even talking about like this battle station, like he's like angry at the battle station and stuff. Like, it's he's having so much fun with it. um so
So it's so theatrical.
he would have been like late 30s, like 37,
Oh
38ish or so when
gosh.
this was filmed. So
So good. He's just the perfect choice.
yeah, oh, it's great. I don't, the character of the Emperor, I'm actually, I just, I don't know that they needed to introduce like a bigger bad guy. You know, if they had defeated Vader or something, and then it turned out, oh, almost like they did with Darth Maul in The Phantom Menace, where, you know, they defeat him and then we're like, wait, he's not actually like the big bad. You know,
Yeah.
he's a henchman. But since Vader is still kind of on the table, and I mean, I think, you know, they needed, if Vader was going to, you know, sort of redeem himself at the end, they needed it to be against somebody that was more powerful than him.
Right.
I think was the point. I love all the Emperor scenes because of McDermott. He's fantastic. I love right before he right before the last time he starts zapping Luke before Vader throws him. He his line reading of "Now, young Skywalker, you will die." It just gets like that is such a good line. Like he does. That's the one time he doesn't go over the top. He just says
No.
it like this is coming. Like
Yeah,
you're
this
gonna
has happened.
die.
Very
Like,
matter of fact.
and it's
And he gets
great.
your full attention too.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
He has that pause. It's great.
Ooh,
Yeah. Well,
Josh. Do you see Josh's
yes.
question?
I just saw that. Yeah. So I guess this is a good time to talk the trailer for the
Rise.
Rise of the Skywalker. That's
Okay.
I want to say the Last Skywalker,
I know.
um,
I confuse those two
which may
all the
also
time.
be true. We don't actually know
Yeah.
who they're talking about is rising. I mean, we know this is not a spoiler for Rise of Skywalker, but we know Kylo Ren is a Sky of the Skywalker line because he is
Hmm.
Leia's son. Um, but you know, I'm it makes me a little nervous that they're going to reveal that Rey is also a Skywalker, and I kind of don't want that. But we'll talk about more about that when we get to
I
Last
thought
Jedi.
that from the beginning.
But they did refute that in the Last Jedi. But it could have just been Kylo Ren lying. But we'll talk more
Yeah.
about that when we get there, I suppose. But anyway, so minor spoilers here for in the trailer for Rise of Skywalker, or Rise of Skywalker. Right at the end, it says, you know, nothing is truly dead, something along those lines, and then you hear the Emperor's laugh. And Ian McDiarmid came out on stage at Star Wars Celebration after it, and they confirmed that he does have a role in the movie. So yeah, Joshua and Natalie here ask, did he really die? I hope so. I'm hoping that he just appears either as a Force ghost or as some sort of memory. You know, they find a holocron or something
Mhm.
that he is in that form, and that he doesn't just come back and is a bad guy. Um, but I guess it could be anything. I mean, Ryan Johnson did kill off Snoke in the Last Jedi, so maybe J.J. Abrams was a little annoyed about that and is like, "Fine, I'll bring back another guy, bad guy."
Right. And
Um,
was it confirmed that Hayden Christensen is going to be in this film?
I didn't hear
His
that. I don't
voice?
know.
There was a huge rumor about a month or two ago. Um, but I don't know if it was ever confirmed. Yeah, so I don't know. So was Vader, did he always say no and then no before picking up and throwing the Emperor?
He did
Because I
not. That
never
is
noticed that
no. That
before.
is a special edition edition. Um,
Okay.
I did. That is actually why I watched the video that with all the special edition changes because I couldn't remember if that was or not. But it is. He doesn't say anything in the original. He just turns and looks at the Emperor and then
Yeah,
picks him up and tosses him.
that's
Um,
what I remember,
I guess they really like Darth Vader yelling no. So
which ruins every scene. But I mean, yeah, whatever. He did it, and I didn't remember it. and he looked so old. For I mean, you think of like all the people he killed, in A New Hope, and then he had just battled Luke, and then he takes off his mask and he looks so old, and it just doesn't fit the all the things that he had done before. But I mean, look at the stuff that Yoda did when he was like in his 800s, I guess.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. I mean, who knows? Um, but yeah, I looked up the Hayden Christensen rumor, and basically it's just people positing what the rise of Skywalker means, and some people are saying, well, it could be that Anakin comes
oh,
to help, and it's more of his redemption story kind of thing. But
that makes sense.
yeah, so but yeah, I will say that the title of the new movie made me a little nervous because I just don't really want Rey to be a Skywalker. I want her to be. I like the story of her just being a nobody that turns into a hero. I think is much more interesting, much more like Luke was in the first movie.
Kyle said, "I bet Palpatine was possessing Snoke from a holocron or something. Hence why they're going to Death Star wreck in this one. Snoke dead equals Palpatine's spirit free again."
I mean, could be, yeah. But yeah, and a Palpatine spirit, and that I don't mind as much. I just don't want him to really have a physical form. That would be seems very hard to explain because he got tossed down a shaft, and then the Death
Then
Star
the
blew
Death Star
up.
got, yeah,
So yeah, it's a little hard to explain how he made it. Although they managed to somehow Darth Maul
bring
made it.
back Darth.
So
Yeah,
um,
so crazier things have happened. Um,
but yeah, I think
yeah.
I don't know that I really have much else. Oh, one thing. So on the moon of Endor, this the whole battle with the Ewoks and everything, I couldn't figure out what the Imperial Army's goal was, because like they were supposed to kind of capture, I guess, the team, but then when it started going badly, like they still weren't shooting to kill, except for that one Ewok, I guess. Um, and which was a really weird shot to just all of a sudden be like, "Hey, look, Ewoks are dying." It's like, "Whoa, easy there." Like,
But just one.
but yeah, and he could have just been knocked out. Like they don't take his pulse or anything. but
Yeah.
but they're not really shooting to kill. They're not just guarding the bunker. It seems like they all could have just stood around the bunker and said like, "Okay, well, go ahead, go fly your hang gliders and whatever. We're just gonna hang out here with our ATSTs." And they like go charging into the woods for no like it. It just didn't seem like they were doing anything other than getting hit with rocks.
I know, and that just kind of adds to the confusion of the whole Endor thing.
Yeah,
Han and Leia and
yeah.
Luke and the whole team get sidetracked by the cute Ewoks, which I totally get.
I mean, I would too. If I met little teddy bears in the woods, I'd be like, "Oh, I'm gonna go where you're going." Like, yeah,
Like
let's hang out.
I'm taking you home now, you're mine.
Yeah.
But and then the final change, which is at the well, I
Uh,
guess not the very end of the movie because there's one big change, but they got rid of this Ewok celebration song. And
yeah.
I'm
Yub
so
nub.
mad about that. It's the best song.
Yeah.
Well, there's a lot of good John Williams songs, but like it's one of the best songs, and they got rid of it. And that song is so hard to find on the internet, and it's so good.
It's called
And I
Yub
was
Nub, in case you're wondering.
yep,
Um,
no, maybe that's why I can't find it.
but yeah, it's weird. I actually don't. The new song I don't mind so much. Just a score now, and it's a nice score. I don't mind that exists. The scenes of the parties on other planets and thing is ridiculous. I don't. It doesn't look good. It doesn't make it like okay. Why they're celebrating in the streets of Mos Eisley? Like why do they care? And if everybody's
Because
if
well, it
everybody on
makes sense.
well,
It's
but
the Empire.
if
Yeah.
everybody's so against the Empire, why are they still in charge? Like it's not. It doesn't seem like it was that hard to overthrow them.
Like, why isn't the rebellion bigger in that case and more
Yeah,
people joining in?
like because I mean, even all of Coruscant was celebrating. That's the home of the government. Isn't that where the Emperor like sits? Like, couldn't some like I realize the Emperor and Vader would be hard to kill. They're Sith, but literally everyone else seems super easy to kill.
When at
So
that point, it's like two people running the whole thing.
yeah, it
So yeah,
just
I guess I get it
I
from that
mean, it
perspective.
would be, it's, I mean, there are real world examples of dictatorships and that falling. And yeah, there are, parties in the streets kind of thing, but it's on a much smaller scale. It's not like the whole world is like, yay, finally. They obviously had support or else they wouldn't be where they are. So it seems weird that like everyone is celebrating. But yeah, the old Yub Nub ending was still better, like under, for all circumstances. So.
And then Tom, which I was just going to bring up, the change of Vader from the old version to the
Uh,
newer at the end, which Hayden Christensen never knew about
Really?
until
Oh,
someone told him. Yeah, he didn't like approve it or anything. It just kind of
yeah,
showed up one day and he's like, oh, okay, there I am.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
yeah.
It's, and I find it even weirder that they didn't replace Alec Guinness with Ewan McGregor then,
Yeah.
because like,
But he
why
was never
does,
evil to begin with.
but why does Anakin get to go back to his like pre Vader self? Like, well, why isn't he the old man like he was in originally in the movie?
Because George Lucas was like, that was his like good non-evil self, where Alec Guinness was like never evil
Well,
to
then it
begin
should
with.
have been like Jake Lloyd because he murdered a ton of sand people when he was Anakin. Like,
See, that's actually
um,
a better
and he
option,
still looked
but
like that when he murdered all the Jedi children. Like it's, I just don't it, and if they want to say like, oh, you go back to like your peak self or whatever, then fine, but then it shouldn't be Alec Guinness in there either. And I'm not
right.
saying I want them to change that. I just don't think, like, I don't know, it just seems silly to change it at all, or put Anakin in like, or put Hayden Christensen in like old makeup or something at least to make him look older or something.
Yeah. Yeah, that's also an option. But again, it just adds to some of the questionable
Yeah.
choices.
And again, and it's funny because normally things like the, when they remade Ghostbusters and that, like, it didn't bother me because I own the original Ghostbusters. If I want to watch that, I just watch that instead. Like
Right.
it doesn't erase, the original version. Um, but with this, like, it's really hard to watch the original version. Like it kind of does erase it right now. Which I think is why people get so mad about stuff like this, because like if there were just, if it was just available to watch the theatrical cuts, like,
Hmm.
then I think everybody'd be like, okay, fine, go ahead, George, change everything you want. Like, then, I don't have to watch it, but you kind of have to watch it.
Well, and that's when you brought up just having a big box set where it has
Yeah,
every single version, every single cut, and then
yeah,
you can choose like 1977, 1997, 2011. It's like you
yeah,
have all of them to choose from.
yeah. Because
And
like
then,
Return of the Jedi, feel like it was, they made changes in 97, '04, and 11. I think were the three
yeah,
like big rounds. So like
little excessive,
it
but
seems
yeah,
it, yeah. Yeah, and I would love, because I would occasionally watch like the redone remastered versions and stuff just because,
yeah.
and they could charge a fortune for that. Like,
Well, people would buy that. They totally would. And you wonder if they will once Galaxy's Edge gets bigger and once they complete the last film, Rise of Skywalker, if that's something that they'll consider if enough people want it. But
I hope so, but yeah, Tom asks if you can even find the original versions, like not legally.
yeah,
There are
unless you
people
own
there are
them.
people who have ripped them and make them, have them available online and stuff. You can find them, but it's not easy. Like I somewhere have VHS copies of them that I could put on DVD. They'll look like crap, but it's hard. Yeah. But yeah,
Okay.
I think. Oh, I love the scene at the end where Leia just assumes Han knows what she's talking about when he's
Oh
like,
yeah.
"You love him, don't you?" And she's like, "Yeah."
When she's like, I
And
can't
it's like, well,
tell
you
you,
can't you
like I
can't
thought
leave
about
it
her
like.
earlier.
But like right at the end where he's like, you love him, don't you? And she's like, what, Luke? And she's like, well, yeah. And then pauses, and it's like, well, you can't just leave it like that. And then she's like,
And then
oh
like,
no, not like
okay,
that. He's my brother. And it's like, well, that should have come with the other part. Like you can't
right.
just throw that in on the poor guy.
Well, earlier he's like asking for information, and she's like, I just want to be alone. I can't tell you. I
Yeah.
did like just like bringing him on a tailspin, and then it gets figured
And I
out. But
really wanted Han to follow up with like, oh, wait, did you know that when you were making out with him in front of me?
which
Because
is something you you'd think he'd say because he's like kind of, that's his personality. But I mean, man, they just didn't, compared to Empire, those two just did not have the lines or the dynamic or like the
No.
bickering that they did.
Yeah, and Jeff asked here if we think Disney will put out multiple cuts. I mean, I don't know. See, it kind of depends what the deal was when they bought Lucasfilm. If there was something in there where George wrote in saying like, no, you'll never do that, and it's in the contract, then I don't know exactly how that would work. It could also just be a courtesy to George Lucas that maybe he doesn't want them out there. They didn't have the distribution rights until very recently because Fox owned distribution on the original trilogy. So I don't think there's anything necessary, unless there's something in that Lucasfilm contract. I don't think there's anything that legally is stopping them. But like I said, it could just be that they say like, well, George doesn't want it like that, so we're not going to do it now. The day after he passes away, that might all change.
Right.
But I don't know. I don't think there's necessarily anything stopping them from doing it. But but yeah, I don't know. They haven't really said anything about it. So, but again, I mean, obviously George did not want that to happen. So I could definitely see them saying like, well, okay, it's still they want to be on friendly terms as much as possible with him. So I could see them saying like, all right, we won't, but again, he's not a young man, so it's possible they're just looking for that 2030 release or whenever it
Hmm.
actually happens. So
It's like the day after
yeah.
they'll come out with it.
Yeah,
Wow.
I was actually surprised when I looked at George Lucas is 74 years old, by the way. I was just curious because I didn't remember looking. I actually was surprised when I was looking at looking up John Williams' son, and because obviously if he was in Toto for a while, I was like, well, wait, how old is John Williams? Well, I looked it up. He is 87 years old, John Williams, and still composing. Like that is,
That's
I
about what I would think.
but like I don't know, man. He looks like he's still pretty spry for
Yeah.
darn near 90. Like that's it's pretty impressive looking at some of these people, like how old they actually are. Like Harrison Ford being 76, like is still surprising to me. Although he's starting to look a little more that age, but as of 5 years ago, like he didn't look bad. Like,
When Peter Mayhew, he was in a wheelchair
mhm.
before Force Awakens, and he worked from being in a wheelchair to being able to stand
Yeah.
and being in that movie, which is incredible. So,
Yeah, and I mean, he made it to 74 with a lot of the problems that tend to plague people of that excessive
yeah,
size.
like
So,
spinal surgery
yeah.
and stuff like that. It's amazing. Well, okay, so I have a question. So, we, just so you all know, are taking a week break at some point. Is that next week, Brian, or is that the week
The
after?
week after, we're going to do Force Awakens next week, and then
Okay.
Last Jedi will be 2 weeks after that. Yeah, because
Okay.
I will be on vacation, and then the Friday, my kids have an early dismissal, so we'd have to change the time and everything. So we figure we might as well just take a week off since we have an extra week there before Galaxy's Edge opens. So actually, just looked. George Lucas was exactly 5 days older than Peter Mayhew, which is
Wow.
strange. Yeah, George Lucas is May 14th. Peter Mayhew was May 19th of 1944. So
Gosh.
weird.
Well, next week will be The Force Awakens, 11 a.m. Eastern Time next Friday. And so, yes, we will see you then. Thank you for joining us. Have a good weekend.
Bye.
Bye.